Well, thank you so much for coming on Talk of the Town. Congratulations on the debut album. First off, I always like to say, what kind of story are you trying to tell with this album? Because it is a great listen, I have to say.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's a journey. I will say it's an emotional roller coaster in 12 songs. But I would say the overarching theme is community, growing up, and belonging. I think through each of the individual songs and stories, it's that coming of age discovery of who am I, who do I belong around, and how do I love myself deeper than anyone else. So I think we land the plane in the last song, which is the title track, with the idea that the right people in your life are going to love you and show up for you, and that's going to make all the difference.
But you're not a stranger to music, so I'm curious about why now for the debut album, because you've been in the music scene for quite a bit. So what made you say, all right, this is the time to do it now?
Great question. I know. I've gone back and forth for a couple years because I've been in Nashville for about 4 years. And you come here, you do the co-writing thing, you meet the producers, you get in the scene, and you feel like, all right, I got to put out my first big project. But I'm a self-funded indie artist. And the reality is I didn't want to cut any corners with the quality I was going to put out for my debut record. So I've been touring for the last few years, putting out singles and EPs, building up both the budget and my experience to get to a full project. So now I feel like I've met the right team and producers and co-writers to build a body of work that feels cohesive and not just cherry picking my favorite singles. So yeah.
And I love that you're also representing a different genre of music in Nashville. Everyone always talks about the country music scene, but there's so many other genres here. So tell folks, if they haven't heard your music, what you would describe it as. Is it a pop sound? Is it just indie? What would you
Yeah, it's a great question. Nashville has become so diverse in the music scene, which I love. I would consider myself lowercase p pop. So it's not like the Katy Perry, Dua Lipa big pop, but it's the singer-songwriter side of pop. So, it's the Speak Now Red album of Taylor Swift. It's Maisie Peters. It's a little bit of Colby Calais. But it does have those pop melodies and the catchiness of it, and we bring it to life in the show.
Before we get into the weeds about all the different songs, you did something really cool with the iPod. And I thought it was such a smart idea, so fun. Can you tell folks about what that was and why you were inspired to do that?
Absolutely. I wanted to find a way to catch attention before the album came out and to fund my vinyl production. Vinyl is,
expensive.
Very expensive to produce, but to have a record on vinyl right now is like all the rage. So I knew I wanted it for tour, but I couldn't front the few thousand to get there. So I was like, how do I fund my vinyls but do something fun for everyone? So I kind of just was thinking back on the themes of the album. One of the words we're really trying to have as the through line in the marketing campaign is tangible and analog. And so I was thinking, how do I make my digital music feel tangible again for my fans? And I was thinking back to in my life when that music experience happened for me, and in elementary and middle school, getting my first iPod was that moment where when I clicked play in the palm of my hand and had the music in my ears, it changed my life. And so I was like, what if I bring back that feeling in terms of the iPod? So I literally pulled one out for this interview. So these iPod shuffles, do you remember these?
Yes, which is very hard to come, how did you find them?
So I've been an eBay shark. Okay. I will tell you, Cole. So in the last few months, I've been searching eBay, trying to find iPods that either come with a charger or are cheap enough where I can buy a charger in addition to it. They are tested, so they're not like totally shot. And I can restore them. So basically I bought about 30 of them, hoping that at least 20 could be salvageable. And over the last few months, I've been restoring them and kind of fixing them and resyncing them with my music and my catalog. And so I put my whole new album on these iPod shuffles. 20 of them did work. I found 20 with chargers. I put my whole album on these iPod shuffles, and then I did it as a drop. So 48 hours before it happened, I put out this little promo video of, me clipping on the iPod, pushing play, and my album coming in the ears of like a 20-second clip. And it kind of caught like wildfire. And over 2,000 people were on my website on Friday morning for the drop of 20 iPods.
Which is crazy.
It was crazy. It was so
cool.
crazy.
The fact that people are like, wait, I really dig this. That's awesome.
And so they sold out in under a minute. And then I was like, wait a minute, I could do this again. There's so much demand now. Who knew? So in 1 week, I sourced 20 more working iPods. It was like I became an Apple, Genius Bar employee in that week where I was syncing it all. And then 20 more iPods did a second drop, and they sold out in 19 seconds. And so after that, I was like, there is such a demand right now and a hunger for the tangible music experience to return. Vinyls are huge again. Polaroid is big again, sort of that nostalgic wave. So to ride it with this idea was really fun.
That's so smart, and it is just a blast. My thing that's crazy is like just even having access to iTunes now. I don't even have it because I'm always on a streamer.
It doesn't exist.
So that's crazy.
Yep.
But I want to get into the notes now that I took of just the individual songs because it was a journey. I did not expect where it was going when I first started the album because when I was doing my research, I was like, oh, she's married. This is gonna, like, when it starts, it's so lovely and happy. So when I was with the first song, Starting in Advance, I love the way that it was talking about calling each other on the way home. I literally was like, that's so, like, finding your person vibes. Talk to me about that song and why you wanted that to start off your album.
I wanted a song that was going to be a statement in that first track. I wanted it to catch attention. I wanted it to be fun, catchy, but not dive too deep yet.
Yeah.
I wanted to warm up the listener. So that's just a fun pop song that sets the stage of, we're going to tell a story in this album. This is the first beginning of that story. I wrote that about the feeling I had after our first date. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I found my person. So sorry that you're never going to go on another first date again. That was it.
Yeah.
So let's do this thing.
Well, and it took me to like my first date with my wife because it just has that feeling there.
Yeah.
And so you're like kicking your feet giggling. I was like, oh, this is so cute.
It is kind of like that childlike joy a little bit. Yeah.
And then what do I do with Happy when things really finally work out on how you process that? I feel like that is a hard thing to conceptualize because I think that people do not always realize like, oh, you achieve a goal or you finally get something that's really like what you've been wanting. And what do you do with that and how you process that? I thought that was a really interesting way to explore that.
Thank you.
Was that the thought process behind that? And I love how you handled it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. In the years of working with my therapist, one of the things she always says is the human brain hates joy. We have no capacity to maintain and hang on to joy for long periods of time. We like to question it. We love to doubt it. We love to try to figure out how we can make it better. We're never satisfied. And I feel like I was running into that conflict when I found my person. We started settling in together. We were a few years in. I was like, I'm going to marry you. Why is my brain not letting me just be okay with that? And so that was kind of a song where it was starting to explore those themes of, I know that I'm happy logically, but I still have all of this questioning for kind of no reason. And how do we let ourselves just sit in the fact that everything's going to be okay, even when our brain doesn't want us to be that? So yeah.
I love that. And then Worst to Be Wrong, I said awesome beat, hardest part was driving home, replacing spots on the shelf. I literally was like, that's crazy to say to me right now. Because I was listening to it and I was like, God, that's just a gut punch to anybody. Because it is those moments when you're alone, when something like that happens, you lose a person in some capacity. And I also said the chant was really cool when they say wrong for each other. I thought that was a really cool aspect. There's a lot of very fun producing that happens in this record. So just walk me through that song as well.
For sure. That song was fun because it was the last song we wrote for the album. The album was kind of chosen, the set list was.
Yeah.
And then I had a writing session at the tail end of that where I was like, I think this is going on the album. We have to quickly produce this out. So that was kind of one of those songs where I just had to trust instincts. I didn't have time to overthink it. So I love that you're pointing out some of those production choices because to me, that was the most fast and furious choices I made where sometimes I think back, I'm like, was that the right call? But that's just a testament to trusting my instincts and knowing that when it feels right in the moment, run with it. So that specific moment at the end of chorus 1 where all the voices come in and be wrong for each other, we really drew that from specifically the production of a band called Muna. I love Muna. They're an amazing pop band. And there's a few of their songs that we drew inspiration for that.
Well, and the production on this album is very cool. I have like so many notes about it just when I was going through it, but I just love, you can see that you guys had your hands in a lot of different things. You could feel that you were very inspired putting this whole album together. Missing Much, I said it had a bit of a Fleetwood Mac vibe.
Thank you for saying that. Okay. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
No, I was literally like, wait a second. I loved it. No, I thought it was so cool. And then I also wrote down about that, talking about life collecting dust, which feeling stuck is very hard. And so, and especially when you see someone else like thriving and getting everything, like that's very hard. Like I always say, comparison's the thief of joy. That's something I have to live by. And so I'm glad that you did that also with the Fleetwood Mac energy.
Thank you for saying that. That was our reference point for that song, was Fleetwood Mac. So I love that you got that. That was really fun. I've never had a song that has some of those darker tones and a little bit more like retro feeling guitars. And that was really fun to explore with my producer, Quinn Redmond, here in Nashville. He is super inspired by that era of music. So bringing that in as an album track felt like it rounded out the project.
You really kept me guessing on a lot of things because you have very upbeat. Then there's moments with piano. There's moments like the Fleetwood Mac energy. Your song is popping up on my phone because I was just listening to it. We ruined our friend group. I laughed at the title because I'm just like, that is like, I know the situation is bad, but like, it's funny because you think to the moments like, this is in TV shows. This is like this is on Friends. They're deciding who gets what. Like, it's a very relatable thing. And I love that you're naming people in it. I know that they're probably just like random names, but
they're
like,
real.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and they are real. One, they rhymed, and two, it happened almost a decade ago. This is my college friend group, and we're all cool now. We're all friends again, and so I sent it to them, and I was like, I hope y'all are okay with this. Like, it's coming out on the album. They're like, are you kidding? This hits so hard. So we kind of wanted to produce it as a pop song that pokes fun at that fall apart of a friend group. Even though it is devastating in the moment, it's not the end of the world, and it's okay to, kind of laugh at it.
Yeah. And then Read the Room, she says, I'm not her ex, but calls me her. I literally, which is funny, I'm driving here. Someone sees me in like our new Channel 5 car, and I'm like jamming, and my jaw was on the ground when you sing that. And they're like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, listening to an album. But no, I literally, like, it got me good. So when you were saying that part, and then just like, that's really tough to swallow, I think, when you're in something and someone might be thinking about something else.
That is hard. And that was, when you're trying to find somebody after a heartbreak, you get that little glimmer of hope when you find someone you click with. And then it feels like that's just punched out the second that the person slips. And it wasn't even like intentional when it happened. This is years ago, but it was definitely a gut punch that you don't forget that feeling. And so putting that lyric in the song, that has been a lyric people have reached out about. They're like, man, ouch. Ow.
Well, and I love that as you've been talking about this, saying this was my college friend group. This is a decade ago. Like, I love that this is really capturing so much of your life in a debut album, which is like very, very crazy. Because usually it's like, oh, this happened to me a couple years ago, but this has been a long project for you.
It has. And it's been, the album ends with more current day, like, within the last year or two. But to tell my story in a debut album, I don't want people to come in without the context. So to get to share all of those different layers of the story was important to me.
Yeah. Secure, you don't know what you want. You don't know what you don't want until you try it on. That I was writing down lyrics because I'm like, oh, I loved it.
Thank you.
You're very thoughtful in a lot of your lyrics, and they hit home for a lot of people. One thing about Nashville songwriters is like, you guys can storytell like nobody's business. And so like if I can picture a song, like, I'm sold. So that's what I felt through a lot of your songs. When you were putting this song together, where were you at when you were putting Secure together?
Writing it or producing it out? Both. Writing it, I was about to propose to my wife. And I was realizing that I had found the person that makes me feel so safe and so at peace. And I was telling my co-writer this, and I was like, it's crazy because your brain wants to self-sabotage before you pop the question of, okay, is this really it? Are you sure this is going to be the one? And I was telling her all about just the way that Kate makes me feel. And she was like, the word that you keep saying is secure. Let's try to dive into that. Yeah. And we ended up writing this song about, realizing that growing up means letting go of the fantasies of those high highs and low lows of an exciting early relationship and landing in the ones where that just feel balanced and steady. And that's what's going to carry you for the rest of your life with someone. So that's where I came from with writing it. Producing it, I wanted it to feel super personal. All of those instruments are live. So we brought in session musicians for that song, played the guitar parts, the drum parts, all of those different things. We have a harp in there. It's tucked into the middle of it. Some handbells, all these super luscious textures to tell the story of, realizing that when you land in love with somebody, it can feel warm and safe and comfortable, and we wanted the song to feel that way.
Yeah, and that came across very much. And in Search History, I thought it was very sweet. Because it's very innocent of being like, I can't ask these questions yet, so I need something to pour this into. So I really liked that. I just thought it was just really a precious song. I don't know how else to describe that.
Thank you.
Because I feel like everyone kind of feels like that at some point.
And we all do our research when we're meeting somebody new. Like, in this day of the internet, like, I'm going to be stalking you. I'm going to find who you are. And if I saw you went to college there, I want to know something about that college so I can ask you on our second date. And that was all of the real searches I put into Google years ago when I met my wife. And people love that song because it shouts out the gluten-free gang and they feel very seen. The gluten-free, audience is loving that song.
And it's growing, frankly.
There's a lot of folks. I think there's a lot of potential for me there.
And then First Girl Love Me, the piano struck me immediately. Which I think is very interesting because when you listen to a project, you start top to bottom.
Sure.
And so why did you want to have this kind of moment of interruption, I guess.
Totally. I mean, yeah, First Girl to Love Me is a reflective song of realizing that the pain of the coming out process that I experienced years ago, and that first girl who really walked through it with me and loved me through it. And even though it was messy and hard and full of tension and heartbreak, I'm so grateful for her and for that experience. And I think that's an applicable thing for kind of any first love. I think even if it was heartbreaking and devastating, looking back years later and realizing that you needed that stepping stone to get where you are now was an important moment in the story of the album for me, is kind of that piece of gratitude in reflection, and keeping it really vulnerable on the piano and a really stripped sort of atmospheric production. I feel like it really told the story well.
And Stay Soft, I was going like this. Like in the car, I was doing a little shoulder action. I just thought that was really fun. It wasn't the lyrics I expected though. From the vibe, I was like, oh yeah, and I was like, oh, this is not the kind of dance.
Kind of devastating lyrics for a happy song.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always think that's fun. Like,
me too.
Mixing that together. Why did you want to do that with this song?
That's a great question. We actually wrote it to be more of like a sad girl sort of acoustic song, and then we were in the studio and we listened down to the whole record, and we kind of had already filled that niche on the album sonically. And I think too, there is something in listening to a pop song and not really realizing what you're hearing until maybe the second or third listen when you cue into those lyrics. And I love that sort of dissonance as an audience member listening to my favorite artist. And we didn't have a song that did that on the album. Yeah. So that was inspired by the Eras Tour. Did you go to the Eras Tour?
I didn't get to go.
Oh my gosh. But it was amazing.
It gives very Dancing on My Own.
Robin, yeah, totally.
Yeah, kind of like that. Where you're like hearing devastating songs, but you're like, this is a bop.
Well, that's kind of where we were at. Where we were at the Eras Tour. It was the Rain Show a few years ago, where it was the shelter.
I'm very familiar with
You know the Rain Show. So we were sheltering in place. My best friend and I, we met when we were 12. We've seen every Taylor Swift show together since we were 12. So she flew down from Rhode Island, where we grew up. We were at the show, and we're sheltering in place in the concourse of Nissan Stadium for 4 hours in this severe thunderstorm with 70,000 people. We're like wall-to-wall sardines, and we're like, in our late 20s, and we're kind of looking at each other. We're like, are we too old for this? Like, we're kind of tired. Like, my feet hurt. We just paid $30 for this beer that's bad. Yeah. And, I'm in my sequin jacket feeling like I'm ready to go home. And we kind of had to snap out of it and say, you know what? We can't be jaded at 28 because 13-year-old us would be so excited we're seeing Taylor together on her Eras Tour in Nashville, Tennessee. And so I kind of wrote that song about reminding myself for that childlike joy and to keep it even in those harder moments where I feel myself hardening, you know? So that contrast is like me in my sequin jacket at a Taylor Swift show being a little miserable. Yeah. And that's kind of that contrast sonically.
And we're almost there. We have 2 more songs.
Yes.
His Word for me was a tough song. That was really tough. I mean, the emotion in that is really intense, and that's a hard story.
Sure.
That's a very vulnerable story too, also to put out there. Talk to me about writing that song specifically.
That song, I didn't know I'd ever put it out, to your point. When I wrote it, I kind of just wrote it because I needed to in that moment. A few years ago, I was, I grew up in the church. I grew up on the worship team. That's where I started music. That's where I fell in love with music. And so when I came out years ago, it was a very hard conversation for some of my church community to still love and accept me for who I was becoming. And had some friends and family who expanded their love of what they believed in Christianity to include me, and some who didn't. And that for me has been a challenging relationship just to grapple with and cope with, and realize that, like the title of the album, the right people are going to love you. And so that song specifically was a message to some of that church family that I lost. And the idea that I don't want to lose you forever, but just know that I'm waiting on this side if you ever want to cross the line to include me in your definition of love and in the definition of God's love. And so I didn't know I was going to get into that theme on the album, but I was playing it for some close friends and family, and they were like, that is a conversation that needs to be had, especially in this current moment. And it's relatable for me, both, as a kid who grew up in the church and as somebody who's now has a queer community here in Nashville. And just that conversation of we can have both. It doesn't have to be black and white. It can be every color of the rainbow.
And it really leads into the last song, the title track. And we talked a little bit about that. But that one was really, that was a great song. And I love that you wrote, put on their shoes to walk beside you the whole way. But you also talk about taking some time for showing up. which I
Yeah.
think is extending a lot of grace to people. Like that sometimes people do take time. And I thought that was
Sure.
really beautiful that you wanted to include a whole aspect of people in your life.
Thank you. And that it's true to my story. I mean, I had people who were on board, didn't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've had people who have taken years to now fully understand the whole magnitude of my life now and my love story and everything like that. And that's just as beautiful. That work is just as important that they had to put in and do. People have different starting points, and I want to be able to meet them there with grace and with understanding, and still not compromise who I am in the process. And so, I love that you referenced that lyric, because that was an important message for me, for every listener to feel seen in that, not just that I'm alienating certain people.
Yeah. And you picked this spot today. Tell us about why you wanted to pick the garage.
Welcome to my garage,
Yes.
our rehearsal space. We leave for tour very soon, and so we've been rehearsing in this garage. This is the indie artist's life. I can't always afford the beautiful rehearsal studios for a whole week straight. So to be able to clear out the garage and put the golf clubs over there and the bikes over there and bring in the drum kit has been really fun. So you're catching us in a very real moment in the creative process.
And then touring, you are no stranger to touring. What do you love about it? And you're going to be going on tour and going to be back here in Nashville in November.
Yes.
Talk to me about just your love of traveling for all this music.
I love the travel of it. I love how every day gets to be different and it feels like a great adventure. But most importantly, when I'm writing and producing out the music, for years, all I can ever picture is singing it live to my audience and sharing those moments, the his word moment, like looking at somebody's eyes who needs to hear that. Or we ruined our friend group and dancing with people in the audience. That to me is what all of it builds up to. And so to have that culminating moment, to be on the road in every city in America for this tour, especially for my album tour, to see pretty much my whole US fan base for the next 2 months is so important to me. And I can't wait to get out there.
Yeah. And just because we've been talking for a while, I don't want to take up all your time because I know you're preparing for tour, but I want to round it out with some, like, a little bit more fun questions.
Yeah.
I did a deep dive kind of on your Instagram. I would love to learn more about your relationship with Betty Who. Because you are a fan, you've opened for her. Talk to me about that relationship.
She's inspired me so much since the beginning. I had her first producer went to my high school. And so in the earliest days of her career, while she was still at Berkeley, I had heard some early demos of hers and was super
like an early fan.
Early fan, just through my personal connection with that family. And was immediately on board, thought what she was doing was so fun and retro, but felt modern, but also the 80s pop, and then when I started seeing her live, I realized that her personal connection with her audience was something I'd never felt with any other artist. I got in on the ground floor, so I know it was personal because there was only 50 of us.
Yeah, sure.
But she was so good at remembering names. She was so good at following up. She was good at making it feel like you were the only one in the room with her.
That's cool.
And that's been something I've really tried to emulate in my career. And I've been very grateful and lucky that along my journey, since I knew her from 12 years ago till now, we've become, friends and peers in the industry where, I get to look to her as a fan, but also we shared the same stage at a festival this summer. We played Summerfest in Milwaukee, and I played and then saw her in the green room, and then she played. And that's been a really fun evolution to get to be, peers with one of my heroes.
And you were a dance marathon person.
Yep.
I also was a dance marathon
Come
person.
on,
Yes.
let's go.
What was that like being a part of that? Because that's a really cool organization. I know that was when you were in college, but what was that journey like to be a part of that?
That actually was the impetus for me doing this, believe it or not. I was just like a hobby guitar player in college. I was like the girl in the dorm who could like sing that Taylor Swift song.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But that event, they had asked me as a student to perform my own music.
That's intense, because that's an intense
For sure.
group,
It was like thousands of people in the arena on campus. So I'm up there with just my guitar, and I'm like, okay, here's a couple covers, and then here's this one song I wrote called Test Drive, which was about like some breakup. And I'd like taught the audience a part in the song and heard 7,000 people sing that back to me. And I was like, I think I need to chase this for the rest of my life. I was in college to become a teacher.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, the transition, because you have a tattoo kind of talking about that as well.
Yes. Wow, you've really done your research.
I like to research. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. But you taught and then you stepped away to pursue music. That's, as someone, I'm a teacher's kid. Like, the passion is there, but sometimes it's like your priorities shift a little bit. But that's kind of hard to walk away from. Was that something that was hard for you?
I always wanted to be a teacher. Like, it was heartbreaking because I loved it. I was a 6th grade English teacher outside of DC in Maryland. Loved it. I coached all the sports teams after school. I ran the karaoke club.
Yeah.
You know, I was super involved and loved my kids. But teachers don't make enough money still. They need to make probably quadruple what they currently make to be fairly compensated. And I, on the weekends, would play cover gigs just for side cash. So I would go to like the local bar and play for 3 hours in the corner and like, you know, get beer thrown on me and whatever and walk away with a few $100s that ended up matching my teacher's salary every weekend. So I would make what I was making in 2 days from 5 days of teaching. And so I was, you know, kind of thinking about that and starting to really kind of accidentally fall in love with performing. Even in the corner, I was like, the way that I can kind of influence the room right now with what I'm doing is really magical. Yeah. So I finished out the school year and ended up being like, I'm going to take 1 year and just try music. I can always go back. And then I've never been back. So walking away from that stability, the benefits, the
benefits,
the 401k, you know, it wasn't too many years, but it was enough where you find that stability of a job that it's hard to let go of. But for me, like the drive to follow this dream, even if it was short term, I think I'm processing this in real time. I think I had realistic expectations of myself where I was like, I'm going to give it literally 1 year and I have a degree and that's going to be great if I go back to it. But I think not putting so much pressure where if I don't make it, then I am going to be useless or whatever, really helped to just take the baby steps in the beginning without pressure that it had to be a global success. And I think that really helps me get to where I am now.
Also, we need to put some respect on your name because your lore runs deep. You're a national champion in lacrosse.
I am.
That's crazy. And then you're doing all this?
Yeah.
So do you ever play lacrosse? Like a rec league here
Listen,
and there?
there's a stick back there, literally in the shot. There's a lacrosse stick right now. That wasn't planned. Yeah, I played lacrosse all through school and at Delaware, University of Delaware as well. In my senior year, my last lacrosse game ever was the national championship game.
Wow.
Greatest day of my whole life. Thanks for bringing this up. I never get to talk about my sports feats. But yeah, I do sometimes like throw around. I have a couple transplant friends in town from the Northeast. Lacrosse isn't very big in the South. So it's hard to find like, you know, people who play soccer. They're everywhere. But lacrosse, I have some friends from Boston, from Maryland, from DC. Sometimes we'll play catch around after a writing session. Yeah, it's fun.
And I'd love to talk briefly about your wife, Kate. She's also a musician, yes? That's very cool.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever like to collaborate? Do you like pick each other's brains a lot, I'm sure, over songs?
For
or you try to keep it separate sometimes?
It's yes and both. So her name's Kate Yeager, unbelievable artist. Check her out. Her songs are amazing. We met in a songwriting session. So our story from the jump has been connected through music.
Well, it's like a movie.
It is. It was over the pandemic. We met in a Zoom songwriting session.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And then we ended up going on a socially distanced hike in New Jersey the week later, and then the rest is history. But yeah, it's so nice to have someone who I don't have to explain this career to. I can, you know, if I get off stage super late one night and can't call her till like 1 a.m, she understands that. She understands the hustle of the road. She's actually on tour right now. So, you know, she really understands it. But even just for asking for an opinion from a mix or, you know, a song that I just wrote, I respect her so much. I'm her biggest fan. So having somebody that, as a professional, I love and admire so much, giving me feedback, I feel like I've won the lottery and having a free brain that I get to pick every day. But we do like to separate it too. Our whole life is intertwined. So she won't open for me on tour. I won't open for her. We just get to be in the crowd supporting each other and hearing about it when we get home.
Well, that seems like a perfect place to leave off. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.